if we have the same amount of run up that we had from the low in 2000 to the high in 2011, that was a factor of more than 7 times. And if we go from the bottom in 2015 of $1,100, we're talking about gold in the $8,000 area, which does sort of make sense. Hi, this is Mike Maloney, and we had such a great response from the video we did last week with Jeff Clark and Chris Martenson that we're going to try and make this a regular thing. How are you doing, Chris?
Hey, I'm doing really well, Mike. As you can see in the background, I'm taking a COVID-responsible, separate vacation. I'm taking a little time off this week.
Excellent. And Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Mike, and it's great to be back with both of you. This will be fun.
Yeah, it looks like for you, it's there's no break from work for the weary. You're hard at it still.
Yeah, so. Not when gold and silver are running.
Right. So anyway, the response last week was great. So we're going to continue doing this. And I want to turn it over to you, Jeff, so you can start asking us some random questions and we'll respond.
Great. There's a lot of interesting developments this week. And so we've got another slew of articles that we're going to go through. I'm going to throw these out to you guys. But first, we'll just highlight that as of yesterday's close, we're recording here on a Wednesday. Through Tuesday, gold is now up 28.6% year to date. Silver is up 35.6% year to date. So both assets are really running. So the natural question that we've gotten from a lot of people is this it? Is this the big rise in gold and silver that we've all talked about for so many years and for so long? Is this the beginning of that phase now? So Mike, what do you think?
Well, I think, you put a comment in on one of our communication channels about how every time the gold and silver break into new highs or do a breakout, silver isn't into new highs, but it's done a breakout. There's all these commentators that say, stay away from gold. That was it. It's going to fall, and they all start warning about gold. When has that ever happened with the general stock markets? You don't hear that with the Dow and the NASDAQ and the S&P. It's just crazy for them to think that. And gold is money. And it's responding. It hasn't even finished responding. It's nowhere near finished responding to the expansion of the currency supply. There's currency and there's money. And the money has been lagging this expansion of the currency supply big time. So gold has, in my opinion, has a lot of catching up to do. When it comes to all of the ratios, like the Dow gold ratio, the gold real estate ratio, it's nowhere near the peaks that it was at. And that's your last article, Jeff, was about that, the value of gold and silver versus, people always talk about the price, but there was an entire section of my first book entitled, Don't Tell Me the Price, What's the Value? Because the price doesn't mean anything. It's how much stuff can you buy with it. And gold and silver have a long way to run. It's going to be choppy. But Chris, what's your opinion on this?
Oh, yeah, we're just getting at the beginning of all this. And it's kind of a long answer, but the simplest way I can put it is the central banks are cornered. There's nothing they can do but print. There is no alternative to printing. So that's what they're going to do. As they do that, they deform all sorts of markets, but the biggest market they deform is the bond market. And now if you take a chart of gold's price relative to the amount of negative yielding bond debt out there in the world, it's a ridiculously high correlation. So you remember, Mike, you and I had to put up with this for years. Oh, don't hold gold. It doesn't pay any interest. Well, now we can say, yeah, but at least it doesn't cost you negative interest, right? And so what happens when you get that negative interest rate environment, you get big money moving into gold. We've just started to see some of the first articles coming out about how private money. This is family offices, pensions starting to say, hey, maybe, you know. So the big money, when it starts to move into gold, that tells you we're at the beginning of this whole thing. And I don't think they've even really started yet, but except at the very, very beginning of that. So negative interest rates, I see more of those coming. That's why I think gold is just getting started.
Yeah, you know, I said quite a while ago that for silver to get into triple digits and for this market, the third phase of this market would be marked by monetary demand. What we've had so far is speculative demand, and the run up from 250 to 1900 that happened from 2000 to 2011, that was a greed-driven mania. And now we're starting to see people worry about currencies, worry about fiat currencies. And negative interest rates is a sign of a world gone crazy. That's not possible under anything except Keynesian economics. It's totally insane to have negative interest rates, to loan somebody your currency and them to charge you for the risk of loaning it to them and not getting paid back or getting paid back in inflated currency. So I think that this past week marks the beginning of the third and final phase of this bull market. And like I said in my video yesterday, there's a lot more wrong in the world today economically than there was in 1979 and early 1980 when gold peaked at, you know, if we have the same amount of run-up that we had from the low in 2000 to the high in 2011, that was a factor of more than 7 times. And if we go from the bottom in 2015 of $1,100, we're talking about gold in the $8,000 area, which does sort of make sense. But you know, things are actually much worse out there economically than they have ever been. So anyway, back to you, Jeff. What's the next topic here?
Yes, and on a related note, and as you were saying, Chris, I think we're actually starting to see some other mainstream and Wall Street investors come into the gold sector. Here's an article on Bloomberg just this morning. Gold surged to an all-time high, is winning over a wider fan base of pension funds, insurance companies, and private wealth specialists. And on top of that, there's an article on Zero Hedge talking about how millennials may flood into the precious metal sector. And is gold the next Tesla? Tesla stock, as we all know, has gone up a lot. So what do you guys think? Are we seeing a wave now of the mainstream and Wall Street investors coming into this sector? Because if we are, there's an awful lot of cash on the sidelines that could really, really ignite this market, even more than what we've seen.
Well, Jeff, I've seen some really exciting things, and I've been watching this market for a long time. And let me tell you something that I know you guys are more familiar than I, is that when gold would have a run, you would watch the banks develop a larger and larger and larger short position. We would look at this in the paper futures market, in COMEX, and this would be called, the relative short position of the commercial hedgers, the big bullion banks, right? They would just get shorter and shorter and shorter, and then you'd watch these crushing raids come in, usually around 1:30 in the morning when the markets are thin, right? They would just dump tons of contracts and drive the price down, wash, rinse, repeat. So looking at the trading patterns this time, we see the same thing. We see the commercials getting really long, and we see the speculators, which is another big, that's the hedge funds. They're in there, the managed money. They're a big category, but there's this other category called other that's gotten really big this time, and that includes some of the people you've just mentioned. So we watch gold blast through its all-time high. We watch it running towards 2,000 just like clockwork. Monday night, crush, 2 big hits. And you know what happened? Gold and silver rebounded. And I've been waiting a long time to watch their little magic, middle of the night raids not work. And I think that's a very bullish sign right here. And it's in part because of that other category. They may not be there to trade and try and make a few bucks. They're there to maybe hold that and maybe take delivery. And that's what I think is starting. We're starting to get the first whiffs of that there may be a delivery issue coming up. And I'm sticking to that. I think there's a strong chance we see that here in 2020. If so, watch out for prices. They're going to go sky high, I think.
Yeah, another thing, another factor as far as all this big money. This is something. It's part of a chapter that I was writing for the Great Gold and Silver Rush of the 21st Century, and I'm a book that I'm still working on. And this COVID-19 thing has sort of thrown a wrench into a lot of that because it sped it up so much that stuff is becoming outdated as I can write it. But I did a video quite a while back that was about all of the different factors in this market. And there were 10 different factors. I can't even remember the name of the series of the videos right now, but I was talking about how there were 10 times more people. Well, it's actually, I've refined the numbers. There's twice as much gold in the world. But back in the 1970s, during that bull market, nobody in the USSR could legally buy gold. In China under Mao, you could be put to death for hoarding gold. Basically, only about 10% of the population has about doubled since then on the planet. But only about 10% of that population, that was half of what it is today, could invest in gold. There were a lot of countries that could buy it in South America and Mexico and stuff. But I took, I went down to Mexico back then, and I had never seen poverty like that in my life. You had either dirt poor countries with no commodities exchange in those countries, or you had countries where it was just illegal, and it wasn't legal for Americans to own until the first day of 1975, and Australians until the first day of 1976. So basically, today, we have 17 times more people that can buy gold and silver on this planet, and only twice as much gold as before. So this is a recipe, and that's only one of the many, many factors. And then you look at what the Federal Reserve has done by directing so much funds. When they create new currency and buy assets, they have to get it into circulation, they've got to buy something. They create currency, they buy something. What do they buy? They have to buy some sort of government security. So they buy bonds, and they buy those usually from the big brokerage houses. And so the brokers are now flush with cash, and the correlation between the creation of currency and the rise in the value of the stock market is astounding. I think it was 0.976 or something like that, which is, that's just huge. I mean, it means there's almost no chance that this is an accident. And if from 2009 to today, if Amazon stock has gone up 34 times and Microsoft has gone up more than tenfold, while your income hasn't really gone up much at all, that means that the Federal Reserve is printing currency and giving it directly to the world's richest people.
Very good. That's an excellent point. Thank you, Mike. One of the themes that we got from the questions last week was, is it too late for me? There are a group of people out there that have not actually bought into precious metals yet, or built some kind of resilient lifestyle for the type of crisis that's ahead. So, Chris, you first. Is it too late for someone to start to build a resilient lifestyle? Do they have to be wealthy to do so? And just very briefly, what are the first things they should be focusing on if they haven't started this process yet?
Well, if you haven't started, this is the best time to get started. The second best time was a few years ago, but absolutely, we are at the beginning innings of these big changes that are coming. My point of view, listen, I might be wrong, but I'm not confused about this. We've had a massive debt bubble. It created the everything bubble, everything except for a few commodities. That's bursting. They're printing money like crazy. As Mike said, they're handing it to the rich people. All of these are recipes for things to go a little haywire. So becoming resilient, very important concept. Be financially resilient if you haven't bought any gold or silver. And I'm not talking GLD or SLV. These are nice to own, or even gold mining shares. I mean physical gold in your hot little hands. That's the place to start. Everybody has to have that as an insurance policy. When's the right time to buy an insurance policy? Before you need it. So this would be a good time. And like Mike, I'm not price sensitive about gold or silver. We can look at this and say, we're on a price basis, were there better times to buy? Yes, just a few weeks ago even. But the right question to be asking is, do I have my insurance policy in place? If the answer is no, you got to figure out how you're going to get that. So that's a defined amount of gold and or silver that you're going to put in your insurance policy. Once you have that, now you can take a deep breath and start figuring out if you want to add to that and create more of a reserve buffer. And then there we would suggest, hey, just dollar cost average. Don't try and be smarter than the markets. As Mike said, they chop. They go up and down, and there's going to be a lot of price movements along the way. That's the nature of these things. But beyond that, once you've got your financial house in order like that, then I would suggest people start looking at building other forms of resilience into their life. This could include, where's your food coming from? Where's your water? How do you heat your house? How do you cool your house? These are all investments people can make who own homes, and that have fantastic returns, better than anything Wall Street could ever promise you if you go about them in a thoughtful way. So yes, now is a great time to begin your resilience, in no small measure because we've really only begun this period of disruption, volatility that I think is going to be happening financially, socially, across all sorts of dimensions, politically. It's really just getting started.
Yes, what do you think, Mike, for the person who hasn't really started protecting themselves with their money?
Well, I never make, I don't give advice, so I don't make recommendations. But for me, what I see out there is that for anybody that waits too long, I've often talked about the day that gold and silver become unaffordium and unobtainium. And already we've seen Pan American Mining announced, and they're one of the largest primary silver producers, and they announced that they shuttered two of their mines, the mines in Peru, I believe it was, because some of the workers tested positive for COVID. And so they can't send these guys down into a hole working in close proximity with each other. And I said that earlier in the year, that just when everybody wants it, it's going to be in very, very short supply. And we're also seeing the U.S. Mint is in response to the pandemic. They are limiting the amount of gold and silver coins that they're going to be minting. They just made that announcement a few days ago. And so those are going to become in very short supply. And when that happens, the premiums go way up, the price over spot. The spot price is for an unlimited quantity of futures contracts. And so that's not the price of gold and silver. It's the price for an IOU for gold and silver. So if you want to buy an IOU, if that makes you comfortable, buy that and watch the price. Otherwise, what's important is to be ahead of the big rush.
Yes, very good. That's right, Mike. And with prices going up, premiums are likely to go up as well with what the U.S. Mint has started to do. So you really can't put this off too much longer. So we really encourage people to continue to accumulate. So let's switch gears real quick to a completely different topic. And Chris, we'll start with you. There's been some censorship of the hydrochloroquine, program out there. So can you comment on what's going on there? This is not something I'm terribly familiar with. I've not kept up on it, but you can. Some medical professionals appear to be being censored. Facebook, Twitter. There's, it's a political thing as well. How do you interpret all this and what's going on right now? And is there, how bad is the censorship, I guess, is my question. And what do you think, where do you think this is going?
Well, I'd be happy to address that. My background, my PhD's in pathology from Duke University. I went through 2 years of medical training. So I know a little bit about what's involved in running good studies and getting data and all of that. So early on in the hydroxychloroquine and the chloroquine story, it was determined that in China, way back in February, that administering those compounds, and they're both derivatives of each other, so I'll just call it HCQ, stands for hydroxychloroquine. Administering that early seemed to have some benefit. Everybody was searching for anything that could help against this new novel mystery disease, right? So we have data, Jeff, from a long time ago that says this stuff works. And then other studies started coming out saying it worked, but for whatever reason in the United States and in the UK, the decision was made at some higher level to really start demonizing HCQ. I'll leave the speculation as to why that is. Is it pharma greed? Is it because people hate Trump and he said maybe this stuff works? We don't know what the reasons are, but I can tell you the science behind this has been completely bastardized to the point that it's not about the science anymore, it's about something else. But scientifically, I will tell you there are dozens and dozens and dozens of studies that say this stuff works. And it would be great to find anything that works, right? And we have other protocols that we know work. By the way, taking vitamin D works. We have all these things that we know work. And instead of talking about any of that, just this morning, Anthony Fauci is on TV saying hydroxychloroquine doesn't work and we have the proof. He doesn't talk about the fact that it does work. He doesn't talk about all the other things that we could do that work. And if he cared about public health, we would be saying, here's what you need to know, here's what works. And for whatever reason, that's not coming out. So a bunch of doctors got together and said, hey, we're on the front lines. We're actively frontline treating people with COVID. They put out their video. YouTube took it down. Twitter took it down. It got heavily censored because it's not the story that somebody wants told. And maybe they didn't do the best job of telling the story. I could give them some advice on how to do it a little better. But it's very clear that if you want good, high-quality medical information in the United States, in Canada, and in the UK, it's really hard to do that right now. Hey, looks like I got a storm coming.
Yeah, it's sad that all this has become politicized so much, especially when we're talking about a global pandemic and the future health of society, really. So it's very sad. So, Mike, actually, a separate question for you.
Wait a minute. I want to comment on that. First of all, I have a storm coming, too. There's a tropical storm blowing in. So it's getting very dark outside, and my lighting is changing as we're speaking. But when it comes to the hydroxychloroquine thing, a friend of mine just texted me some information, and there have been 65 studies, and 39 of them are peer-reviewed. And the studies come up with, if you're taking hydroxychloroquine before you're exposed, the results are close to 100% that it's going to prevent you from dying. And if you take it a little bit later, it's much lower, like about 60%. And overall, it's 75% effective. And I mean, this is 39 peer-reviewed studies. And so we're talking about death rates like in the USA, there's 460 deaths per million people. In Cuba, there are 8 per million. And so they show countries that have been administering hydroxychloroquine, and the reduction in the death rate is just so dramatic. And then it seems like those countries, I don't know, Chris will have to comment on this, but like the USA, 460 deaths per million. Singapore, which has had quite a number of cases, the USA has 13,500 cases of COVID per million people. Singapore has 8,700 cases of COVID per million people. But the per million people deaths, and then this isn't measuring by how many cases, it's how many deaths there are per million. 460 in the United States, 5 in Singapore, 8 in Cuba. Malaysia, where people take hydroxychloroquine because there's so much malaria, 4 deaths per million. Hong Kong, 3 deaths per million. Indonesia is 18 deaths per million. And I just find it very interesting that countries that have been administering this medicine that Chris is talking about have such low death rates. And the U.S., Spain is 608 deaths per million. Belgium is 847. Italy, 581. So we're all way up there. And the countries where hydroxychloroquine is common because there's malaria in those countries, very low death rates. Chris, can you comment on that?
Yeah, it's everything you're saying is correct. We have all the data now from countries where we see they use a lot of hydroxychloroquine, they have very low death rates. And we even have other cases where countries have been on hydroxychloroquine, came off it, their death rate went up, and then they went back on it and it came back down again. This is true for Panama. This is true for Switzerland. So we have all that data. The mystery to Jeff's original question is, what is going on here? As a scientist, I am offended by what I see going on. It has nothing to do with saving lives, helping people, recover from a really bad disease if they get it. It's really astonishing to watch, but I think it's just laying bare something that's been true for a long time, which gets us back to the whole fourth turning thing, which is our major institutions are failing us. When your primary health institutions can't even find their way to give you validated, vetted, and useful health information without being all conflicted by something, politics, money, whatever the story is. That's where we are right now. And, to circle all the way back around to where we started this conversation, is part of the reason that I buy gold and silver, because I don't trust the way our institutions are running right now. And it's so obvious when they can't even get health right. This is about people's lives. And we can't even do that without somehow getting confused about it. That's a very bad sign. If you can't do it when people's lives are on line to do the right thing, what's the chance you're going to do the right thing when it's just money on the line, currency on the line, right? So That's how I connect those two dots here.
I feel like it's interesting. Is the the healthcare system, that community in the United States, and especially the media, are they now guilty of murder? I mean, they're suppressing data that saves people's lives. In this study, they say if something is 50% effective, it would have saved 331,000 lives. If it's 75% effective, which it looks like hydroxychloroquine is, it's close to 100% if it's administered before catching it. If it's administered after you catch it but early, then the split between the two comes out at 75% effective in this study. And that is 500,000 lives saved. It's 496,900. It just rolled over to 999 right now. So it's very interesting that our institutions, the people that are running things, seem to be skewing all of the information that we get these days. Everything is twisted, and I just don't trust any data coming from any official sources anymore.
Yeah, good point. Mike, the question I was going to ask you is the answer maybe decentralizing the media? Is that where the future is? Is that process maybe starting to be underway? We're going to wrap this video up, so it's a big topic, but can you give us like a 1-minute answer? Do you think that's what the future is going to entail to some level?
Well, that is sort of what is starting decentralization of media. This is what has been going on with YouTube. And there are some, there's a lot of misinformation on YouTube and these other social media platforms, but there is also some serious investigative reporting that goes on. I mean, Chris did an amazing body of work from late January through today, basically, that is so research intensive. What time do you get up and start those, Chris? I know that you're still recording at like 4 p.m. is when but what time do you get up to start all of the research every day?
I'm usually up by 5:30 in the morning. It's about 8 hours of research and preparation that goes into every one of those. So I was doing them every day for a long time. I kind of got a little burnt. I'm down to 2 a day. I was supposed to be taking this week off as vacation, and ended up doing one yesterday because so much important information came out. And by the way, 100% of those were demonetized by Google and YouTube because they deemed this not to be quality information, even though 100% of what I pull from is all scientific journals, science papers, some of them preprints. But, I'm just basically collating information, which, by the way, shouldn't be up to me to do. I was doing it because nobody else was doing it. Really, honestly, that's what the CDC was supposed to be doing, but they had no interest in that. So that's what I did. And guess what? That got promptly demonetized on day one. They were quick.
And is your Wikipedia page back?
No, in Spanish it is, but they also yanked my wiki page down. If anybody doesn't know, the wiki is one of the least reliable, least trustworthy platforms out there. You should look into that, because it's really awful what they do there and how they build them, who they say they are and who they actually are. Couldn't be more different, you know.
Yeah. So when it comes to decentralization, though, there's another factor, and that is that there are all these brand new platforms for social media coming out that are driven on blockchains. So it's not coming out of a single server. It's coming out of servers all over the world, and it can't be controlled by a single entity. So corporations can't delete your content. It's voted, a lot of them are voted up and down by the readers. So the content, though, stays there. So like Chris's Wikipedia page that got deleted, they won't be able to do that. It'll be the viewers just saying whether things go up or things go down, but the information stays there and cannot be erased. So that is a wonderful new form of decentralization and taking the ability to abuse power away from these giant media outlets like Facebook, for instance, and YouTube. So anyway, back to you, Jeff.
Very well put, Mike. That's exactly true. So we're going to wrap this video up. But you both have free books that can really help some people for those that haven't got them. So Chris, you first. Tell us about the free book, pardon me, that you have, how people can get it, and what it can offer to them.
Sure, I'd be glad to. The book is called Prosper with an exclamation point. Co-wrote it with Adam Taggart, co-founder of Peak Prosperity. You come by peakprosperity.com and you can find a free download of the book there. And it takes you through 8 different forms of capital that if you are rich in each of these 8 forms of capital, you will be resilient. You'll be happier, healthier, wealthier, all of that. And that's our response to this troubled times we live in. Hey, we all know about the problem and we can do all great problem definition, but what's the solutions? That's what Prosper's about. And there's a whole movement of people who are becoming resilient. So that's what we're all about, helping people see how they can become resilient.
And Mike, tell us about your free book and how people can get it.
Okay, mine is focused on only one of the 8 forms of capital that Chris covers, but it's Guide to Investing in Gold and Silver. It does have quite an education on monetary history and some simple economics. It has been the best-selling book on investing in gold and silver since it was released first in 2008, and it was updated in 2015. But it is 95% of it or more is pertinent and accurate today. And so it has withstood the test of time. And it's absolutely free, and you just go to goldsilver.com, one word, goldsilver.com, like in the background on your banner there, Jeff.
Yes, and, exactly. And I've got my copy sitting right here on my desk. That's what it looks like. But of course,
you can buy it on Amazon as the paperback, like Jeff just showed you, or you can get a PDF by going to goldsilver.com. Right at the bottom of the page, there's a place that you subscribe to the newsletter. You're going to be getting Jeff's insights weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, and you'll be getting alerts when we come out with another video. So,
well, that's going to wrap up this video. So thanks again, Chris, for taking time out of your vacation to join us and bearing through the storms there, both of you, Mike and Chris. So thanks, everyone. If you like this video, hit the like button there, and we'll continue to do this format if you like it. So Chris and Mike, thanks again, and we'll see you both next week.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, everyone.